You wake up and the room is still. No footsteps echo down the hall, no voice calling from the kitchen, just silence. And for once, it doesn't feel empty. It feels like a choice. You brew your coffee in quiet. You sit with your thoughts, not to escape them, but to greet them. There's no one else to impress, no one to text first, no performance to maintain. And somewhere in that stillness you begin to realize, this isn't loneliness, it's sanctuary. For years, society told you that a man alone must be broken, must be missing something. That if you're not in a relationship, if you're not constantly surrounded by others, then you've failed. But what if that's the real illusion? What if solitude isn't a punishment, but a path? The truth is, very few men are brave enough to be with themselves, to face the quiet without filling it with distractions, to sit with regret, to wrestle with memory, and to emerge stronger. But you've chosen the harder path, not because you had no other option, but because you stopped needing one. And that choice, the choice to walk alone, isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because the man who no longer runs from silence is the man who begins to hear what truly matters, his own voice, his own values, his own direction. This isn't about being anti-relationship, it's about building a relationship with the only person you'll never lose, you. And in this video, we're going to explore what happens when a man fully embraces that power, not just in theory, but in practice. The strength, the freedom, the calm clarity that comes when solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your sentence. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may not just shift your perspective, it may finally confirm something you've known deep down all along, that the man who walks alone is not alone at all. He's simply walking ahead. The unexpected strength of standing alone. At some point in life, often later than we expect, a man looks around and realizes something's different. The world hasn't changed. The noise is still loud, the expectations still press, but within, something has shifted. There's a stillness now where before there was restlessness, a strange sense of stability not born from having more, but from needing less. It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe it starts when the calls stop coming, or when the relationship ends and no one replaces it. Maybe it's waking up to silence in the morning and not needing it to be filled. But there's a day, quiet and unremarkable, when you realize you're no longer afraid to be alone. That's the turning point. Society doesn't prepare men for this kind of strength. We're told that solitude equals failure, that a man without a partner must be incomplete, that there's something to fix, to chase, to gain. But the Stoics would say otherwise. Seneca once wrote, "The man who is content to be alone is never truly alone." Because solitude, when chosen, is not loneliness, it's liberation. And here's the truth most never tell you. The man who walks alone learns things no one else does. He learns how to sit with his own thoughts without needing them to be entertained. He learns how to move without applause, how to speak with clarity because no one is there to distort his voice. He learns how to find meaning not through attachment, but through alignment with his principles. You see, a man in solitude is forced to look inward, and that's not easy. It's far simpler to stay busy, distracted, surrounded by people who keep your mind off the real questions. But when the noise fades, when there's no one left to impress, a deeper conversation begins. What do I value? What kind of man am I when no one's watching? What kind of legacy am I quietly building? And it's there, in that quiet, unglamorous honesty, that the real power emerges. Not the kind of power that controls others, but the kind that commands yourself. The man who stands alone learns to stop negotiating with his excuses. He wakes up and acts, not to be seen, but because it's who he is. He disciplines his habits, not to earn praise, but because order calms the storm inside. And little by little, he becomes something rare in this world. A man who does not waver. From the outside, people may not notice, They may even pity him. But inside, that man is sharper, stronger, more at peace than most will ever understand. Because he's not spending his energy trying to keep up or catch up. He's finally caught up with himself. And that's why this moment matters. The turning point isn't when you start to enjoy being alone. It's when you no longer need anything to feel complete. When solitude no longer feels like something you're enduring, but something you've earned, a place you've arrived at, not to hide from the world, but to rise above its noise. This isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new one. Because once you've built this kind of quiet strength, everything else in life changes. You become harder to manipulate, harder to distract, harder to shake. And ironically, that's when the right people begin to notice. Not because you sought them, but because they recognize the rare stillness you carry. You didn't choose this path to be seen, but now people will see you differently, and more importantly, you'll see yourself clearly for the first time in a long while. 7 principles of Stoicism that define what it is to be single. Number 1. Self-sufficiency is the foundation of freedom. A man who walks alone learns quickly that no one is coming to save him. And strangely, that realization doesn't break him, it builds him. He becomes his own provider, his own protector, his own counselor. In solitude, he doesn't outsource strength, he forges it. The Stoics believe the richest man isn't the one with the most, but the one who needs the least. That's not a slogan. Self-sufficiency isn't just about money or chores, it's about mental fortitude. About knowing that if the world grew silent tomorrow, you'd still hear your own voice clearly. Number 2. Emotional control is power in its purest form. Many men react, few respond. The man who walks alone has space between stimulus and action, between feeling and reaction. That space is sacred, because in that gap, he decides who he is. He doesn't rage at the world when it doesn't go his way. He doesn't spiral when life turns cold. Instead, he pauses, reflects, and answers with dignity. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we always have power over our minds, not over events, but over our response to them. That's what makes a man stable, not his circumstances, but his sovereignty. Number 3. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's refinement. In a world drowning in noise, silence has become an endangered virtue. But the Stoic man turns down the volume, not because he hates the world, but because he wants to hear himself again. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's the forge where clarity is shaped. When he is alone, he reads, writes, walks. Not to escape, but to listen, to understand, to recalibrate. And in those quiet hours, he remembers his values, reclaims his vision, and walks forward, not faster. Number 4. Purpose over pleasure always. The man who walks alone doesn't drift, he steers. Not toward quick highs or fleeting comfort, but toward something deeper. He doesn't waste hours chasing approval or applause. He chases what matters: mastery, discipline, a life that makes sense in silence. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's not advice, it's a blueprint. And the man who lives by it doesn't fear aging. He fears aimlessness, so even if no one is watching, he shows up for his craft, his mission, his name. Number 5. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. He doesn't need the room to like him. He doesn't need to explain his decisions. When he says no, it's not cold, it's clear. A man grounded in Stoic values knows that people's opinions are not his responsibility, and peace comes at the price of not overextending. He gives, but not at the cost of his center. He connects, but not out of fear of being alone. In truth, because he respects his time and energy, his presence becomes more respected by others. People sense the man who cannot be swayed by flattery or pressured by noise. Number 6. Relationships are chosen, not chased. He may live alone, but that doesn't mean he walks through life disconnected. Quite the opposite. Because he isn't desperate for company, his connections are cleaner, deeper, more meaningful. He doesn't bond over gossip or fear. He bonds over shared values. He attracts, not because he plays games, but because presence and stillness are rare. A man like this doesn't need to be chased or to chase. He simply aligns and lets those who resonate walk beside him, while those who don't drift away without resistance. Number 7. Inner peace is the greatest wealth. What does a man truly own when the world strips him of everything? Only what he's built inside. The Stoics taught that true wealth isn't in possessions, it's in peace. The man who walks alone understands that joy isn't found in distractions or status. It's found in self-respect, in daily alignment, in waking up knowing you didn't abandon yourself to please the crowd. He walks quietly, but not aimlessly. His life is simple, but not small. And even though he walks alone, he never feels lost, because he walks with purpose. These 7 principles don't make him superior. They make him solid. They don't protect him from hardship, but they prepare him for it. And, as you'll soon see, the man who embodies them isn't retreating from life. He's rising above it. And in doing so, he becomes not just a man who stands alone, but a man others quietly begin to follow. So, here's the truth no one tells you, especially in a world that equates your worth with who you're with or how many people are texting you back. The man who learns to walk alone doesn't do it because he's given up on love, on connection, or on sharing life with someone. He does it because he's finally discovered the one relationship that matters most, the one with himself. When you begin to enjoy your own company, when you find silence comforting rather than threatening, when your validation comes from your own actions and not someone else's approval, something shifts. You're no longer chasing people. You're not negotiating your peace. You're not trying to fill a void. You've stopped running because there's nowhere else to be but here with yourself. And that's enough. Stoicism teaches us that we must master the inner world before we can face the outer one. And for many men, especially those in midlife or stepping into retirement, that wisdom becomes more than philosophical. It becomes essential. Because this chapter of life isn't about noise or crowds or chasing the next thing. It's about clarity, simplicity, purpose, and peace. If you've walked this path alone, or you're just beginning to, know that you are not less. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. You're building strength most never find, because they're too afraid to sit with themselves long enough to discover it. And if this message speaks to something in you, some part that's been quietly craving depth, stillness, and a way of living that doesn't depend on anyone else, I invite you to stay, join this journey with us. Subscribe to Ultimate Stoicism for more content that doesn't just entertain, it strengthens. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how you've walked alone or how you've grown because of it. Because this isn't just a channel. It's a space for men like you to reflect, to rise, and to reclaim something modern life keeps trying to take away: your inner compass. Remember, in a world that's always pulling you outward, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is return inward. And when you do, you'll realize you were never alone. Your soul has always been with you, the greatest companion you'll ever know.